Every year around the 4th of July, we see more reports of injuries and unfortunately deaths from whether it's fireworks or maybe even crashes. Dr. Chuck Burnell is the Chief Medical Officer for Acadian Ambulance, and he's here to discuss holiday safety. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, Dr. Burnell.
Yes, sir.
And he's going to break it down very easy for us. It's fire, water, and ice.
We're going to talk about fire, water, and ice. Three of the big things that just put it in buckets that we can all think about. And when I tried to make it simple message for everybody to remember when we talk about fire. You know, 4th of July, obviously a big celebration with fireworks. We do a lot of barbecuing, cooking, frying foods outside, and just the dangers associated with that. One of the big and vulnerable populations with regards to that is a lot of our young children. So about 40% of these injuries over 4th of July week are going to happen of kids under the age of 15. 40% of what we'll see. So a lot of thermal burns with the fireworks. It's very important to have adult supervision with those. These things will get 3,000 degrees, whether it's sparklers or whether it's the artillery shells. Adult supervision, following direction. The other thing is we're very dry. There's a lot of fire bans in certain areas, so these things can actually create and cause fires. So it's very important to have responsible adults around, and responsible meaning we all like to take a little alcohol in during the holidays sometime, and really having your wits about you, watching the kids and really supervising. Eye protection, ear protection if you're doing the fireworks. Very, very important.
Okay. And now, until you just mentioned, I guess, about the degree that these fireworks get, I knew that they're hot, but 3,000 degrees.
So 3,000 degrees, sparklers will get up to 2,800 degrees. The other thing, when people cook a lot of times, they'll take the barbecue pits after they're done and dump it in the grass. Well, think about how many kids are running around with no shoes on. We see a lot of burns to feet, sometimes hands from handling the little sparklers that are the wires that are left over. Kids will pick those up off the ground, not realizing that that thing could be 3,000 degrees of heat and get a lot of burns in the hand and whatnot. So a lot of eye injuries too. You think about bottle rockets. You know, these kids shoot off bottle rockets, and sometimes, unfortunately, they're unsupervised and they'll have wars with the bottle rockets. So really important to keep an eye on safety around the holidays. So yeah, the fire is definitely something we have to watch for.
And of course, water. What do you have to say about water?
We are a coastal area, and people do a lot of things. We are. Swimming pools, beaches, boats. We have a good time in the sportsman's paradise. So it's really, really important to make sure that, you know, when we're on the water, kids under the age of 16 must have a life jacket on. We go to the beaches. There are rip tides and rip currents, and keeping an eye on not just kids but adults being aware that these hazards are out there, and just being sure that they just prepare and are aware in case something should happen. You know, the other thing we think about with water is boating. Well, the biggest problem with, you know, everybody likes to ride their boat across the water and have fun. When people start drinking, remember the same rules for boating are enforced with driving. So driving under the influence and making good decisions and not hurting people or hurting themselves is very important. So that water can also become a hazard.
And I know that state today starts rolling out the drive sober and get pulled over on the roads, but like you mentioned, it's the same
driving is a whole nother thing. So unfortunately, statistically, there will be 600 deaths on the roads in the U.S. this coming weekend.
Just this weekend?
Just this weekend. There'll be 600 deaths related to auto accidents. A very large majority of those will involve alcohol, unfortunately. So that's another thing, is just staying off the roads if you're using any kind of safety sensitive alcohol or any other medications. But we can all have a good time. We just need to keep our wits about us. That's right.
So what about ice?
So ice. This is one of the hottest times of the year. We are basically, heat indexes over 100 degrees. We're seeing a lot of heat emergencies. We're having people with dehydration, heat strokes, heat exhaustion, heat cramps. One of the big things that I tell people is just make sure that you are prepared for the heat. And there's a few key things we need to remember. Hydration is key. Making sure you have enough fluids and electrolytes in you before you get out in that hot environment, limiting that time in that heat. And the most vulnerable to that heat are the very elderly who may be on medications, or the very young. They don't tolerate the heat as well as a middle-aged person like us would. The other thing that I think about is, besides the cooling, making sure that, you know, air conditioners are in use. A lot of elderly population may have issues with their air conditioning systems at their house. Staying cool. The sun is not your friend. Okay, we all spend a lot of time outdoors, but with the sun and whatnot, you need to make sure you do one or two things. Either put a broad spectrum suntan lotion on,
sunscreen is important,
and you have to reapply it, especially in the water. It's every hour or so. Out of the water, it's every 2 hours. But the other thing is just to cover up. You know, they make these nice spandex shirts with hoods on them now to keep that sun off of us, and they all have an SPF factor of about 50. But you don't have to worry about it wiping off. You don't have to worry about. The other thing we see a lot of time with people at the beach is the one thing we don't cover up very well is our feet. And they go out, and normally we're always covered, and it doesn't get sun exposure. Well, how many foot burns and foot sunburns do we see this time of the year? A lot. So I'm an emergency physician by trade. The number of foot burns that we see because people get out on the beach and they wear flip-flops, so they have this fresh skin that never sees the sun, just getting cooked in the sun.
And easily getting burned.
Very important. So when we look at cooling, just be smart about it. Stay hydrated. Alcohol actually dehydrates. So limiting that in moderation is also an important rule.